Hey everyone, welcome back where we demystify retirement planning and self-directed investing. Today's question is one we get all the time. Can you do Roth conversions and a solo 401k? The answer is yes, but there's a lot you need to know before pulling the trigger. So we'll go over that today. We'll also go over your live questions here on the air. So go ahead and shoot over any questions you have during the webinar, and we'll pause and answer those questions as they come in. They can be questions surrounding any topic about solo 401ks, self-directed IRAs, and even the business financing 401k. As always, today's presentation is for educational purposes. In this webinar, we are going to break it all down, including who qualifies for Roth conversions inside a solo 401k, the step-by-step process to convert pre-tax or after-tax funds, major tax traps to avoid, and how to use the mega backdoor Roth strategy to seriously amplify your tax-free retirement savings. We'll also cover, of course, what is a Roth conversion and how it applies to solo 401ks, eligible sources like pre-tax and after-tax accounts inside your plan, and plan Roth conversions versus rollovers to a Roth IRA, which is better, tax timing tips, when to convert to minimize the tax hit, the mega backdoor Roth solo 401k, how this little known strategy can get you 70,000 into a Roth each year. Common mistakes like triggering unexpected taxes or violating plan rules. So if you are self-employed, a solopreneur, or a small business owner with a solo 401k or looking to open a solo 401k, this webinar is for you. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. All right, so what is a Roth conversion? Well, it's similar to a Roth IRA conversion, except here we are referring to a Roth solo 401k conversion. And that's where you convert pre-tax solo 401k funds to the Roth solo 401k. You notice I did not say you can convert it to a Roth IRA, because in order to convert a pre-tax solo 401k to a Roth IRA, you have to meet a triggering event, such as age 59 and a half, or no longer self-employed, in which case you would have to close the solo 401k plan down. But when it comes to a pre-tax solo 401k conversion, you can only convert pre-tax solo 401k funds to a Roth solo 401k unless you meet one of those two triggering events I touched on. You can also convert voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds to a Roth solo 401k or to a Roth IRA. So you will notice that voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds are not subject to that restriction of being age 59 and a half or no longer self-employed in order to convert to a Roth IRA. So you get to choose whether you want to convert those voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds to a Roth IRA or to a Roth solo 401k plan. I can tell you that most clients prefer to convert the voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds to the Roth solo 401k because Roth solo 401k funds are no longer subject to require minimum distributions. It used to be that Roth solo 401k funds were subject to RMDs, but with Secure Act, those rules thankfully changed. And as a result, just like a Roth IRA, a Roth solo 401k is no longer subject to require minimum distributions. And by keeping those funds inside that solo 401k, that is inside the Roth solo 401k, you're going to have more funds in the plan to borrow from if you later want to process what's referred to as a solo 401k participant loan, or if you want to invest in real estate where you utilize debt financing, aka non-recourse loan financing, then having those funds in the Roth solo 401k is a major advantage over a Roth IRA because when a Roth IRA utilizes a non-recourse loan or debt financing, that does trigger unrelated debt finance income tax to the Roth IRA, but that unrelated debt finance income tax does not apply to 401k plans, including Roth solo 401k plans. So we just went over what a Roth solo 401k conversion is. We also talked about eligible sources within the solo 401k plan, which again are pre-tax solo 401k funds and voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds. Those can be converted to the Roth solo 401k plan. As far as who qualifies for Roth conversions inside a solo 401k plan, we touched on that already. Virtually everyone qualifies as long as the solo 401k provider that you use for your plan provides plan documents that allow for conversions. Not all companies out there allow for solo 401k conversions, so Roth solo 401k conversions. They may allow for Roth solo 401k contributions, but not conversions. We're talking about converting pre-tax solo 401k funds or voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds to the Roth solo 401k plan. But you want to make sure that the solo 401k provider that you utilize provides a plan that allows for conversions. What is more, some solo 401k plan document providers may allow for the conversion of pre-tax solo 401k funds, but they do not allow for the conversion of voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds, which is part of that mega backdoor Roth strategy. So it's important to work with the solo 401k plan document provider, such as my solo 401k financial, whose plan documents do allow for all types of Roth solo 401k conversions. That is the conversion of pre-tax solo 401k funds, as well as voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds. Again, please don't hesitate to shoot over any questions you might have during today's presentation, and we'll pause and answer those questions as they come in. Again, these daily presentations are for answering questions that you may have surrounding retirement accounts. And we also talk about certain topics. And today's topic is one again that a lot of people ask us all the time, and it's, can you do Roth conversions in a solo 401k plan? And the answer is yes, and we've been discussing those here at large. It looks like we have a question here, so let's take a look at that question, and then we'll come back and pick up where we left off. Okay, so we've got a question here from Barry. If not 50 or over, can you just set up one account at the broker for after-tax contributions? True? Question mark. If over 50, you also have to open up another brokerage account for Roth or pre-tax to contribute the extra 7,500. True? So with regards to solo 401k contributions, You can certainly use a brokerage account to make Roth solo 401k contributions. Same thing with voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions. And those can then be converted to the Roth solo 401k or the Roth IRA in the case of a voluntary after-tax solo 401k. With respect to catch-up contributions, if you're age 50 or older, yes, you can do a catch-up amount of $7,500 for tax year 2025. And that's in addition to the overall limit of $70,000 for tax year 2025. So the overall contribution limit to a solo 401k for tax year 2025 is $70,000. And then if you're age 50 or older, you've got that catch-up amount of $7,500, which can be deposited to the Roth solo 401k, but it cannot be deposited to the voluntary after-tax solo 401k bucket, because the voluntary after-tax solo 401k regulations do not allow for catch-up contributions to be applied to the voluntary after-tax bucket. They have to be applied to the Roth solo 401k bucket or the pre-tax solo 401k bucket. And there's also that super catch-up contribution that applies for those who are age 60, 61, 62, or 63 in 2025, which is $11,250. So in addition to that $70,000 overall contribution limit, you can also make $11,250 as a super catch-up contribution if you fall within that age range I just discussed. Therefore, you could easily contribute $81,250 to a solo 401k in tax year 2025. Talk about being able to supercharge your retirement account savings. All right, great question. Go ahead and continue shooting those over, and we'll pause as we cover today's topic. So we'll continue with our topic here. Give me a moment here. Okay, so again, today's topic is, can you do Roth conversions in a solo 401k plan? So let's keep on going over our topics today. The next piece we're discussing here is the major tax traps to avoid when you process a conversion, a Roth solo 401k conversion. What are those tax traps? Well, it comes down to making sure you understand that when you process a conversion of pre-tax solo 401k funds, you can only convert those to the Roth solo 401k unless you are age 59 and a half or older or no longer self-employed, in which case you can convert it to a Roth IRA. That's tax trap number one. That means converting to the wrong type of account. The second trap is understanding that when you process a conversion of pre-tax solo 401k funds, that's a taxable conversion, which means that it's going to be treated as if you received a paycheck, a W-2 paycheck. So it's going to be taxable at the ordinary income tax rates. Therefore, it might bump you into a higher tax bracket. But you want to make sure that you understand that if you process a conversion of pre-tax solo 401k funds, that it could bump you into a higher tax bracket. So you want to make sure you have enough funds to pay the taxes due on that conversion, because the next tax trap is thinking that you can pay the taxes due on that pre-tax solo 401k conversion with solo 401k funds. The answer is you cannot. But when you convert pre-tax solo 401k funds, you're going to have to come up with funds outside of the plan. So funds in your personal bank account or personal checking account to pay the taxes due on that conversion, which you need to pay by the time you file your personal tax return. You may even want to pay those sooner if you're subject to paying estimated quarterly tax payments. So those are tax traps to avoid. So if you're not going to have enough funds to cover the taxes due on that conversion, so funds outside the plan in your personal bank account, then you want to make sure that you think twice before you process that conversion. So those are the major tax traps to avoid. Now, as I touched on earlier, you can also convert voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds to the Roth solo 401k or the Roth IRA. That's known as that's the mega backdoor Roth strategy. And those there, when you make a contribution as a voluntary after-tax solo 401k contribution, those go in on an after-tax basis. So those contributions go in as voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions. Therefore, you don't get a tax deduction for the year. The trade-off, however, is that you can then convert those voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds to the Roth IRA or to the Roth solo 401k. And you're going to want to do that immediately so that you don't have any gains in that voluntary after-tax solo 401k bucket. Because the gains, when they get converted to the Roth solo 401k or the Roth IRA, those will be taxable. But obviously the basis will not, because you did not get a deduction for that voluntary after-tax solo 401k contribution. Now, whether you should convert voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds to a Roth IRA or a Roth solo 401k, we already talked about that earlier. This PowerPoint slide here gives you a comparison that we already discussed earlier, whether you should convert to a Roth IRA or to a Roth solo 401k, and we already established that it's generally best to convert to the Roth solo 401k plan. Okay, so again, if you have any questions during today's presentation, go ahead and shoot those over. We'll pause and answer those questions as they come in. But let's keep moving on now. So with regards to processing a conversion of pre-tax solo 401k funds, what are those steps involved in converting those pre-tax solo 401k funds? Well, let's touch on that. Let's take a look at this slide here. So when you open a solo 401k plan with the solo 401k plan provider, such as my solo 401k financial, you're going to have the option to use your local bank or brokerage firm such as Schwab or Fidelity to hold the solo 401k funds. So let's assume here that you utilize Fidelity to hold those solo 401k funds. And again, if you open a solo 401k plan with a solo 401k provider such as my solo 401k financial, they will assist you in opening up the brokerage accounts at Fidelity for the solo 401k plan that they offer. So the first step is to open the brokerage accounts at Fidelity. So you're going to have at minimum 2 brokerage accounts. One to hold those pre-tax solo 401k funds, and a second one to hold the Roth solo 401k funds. So for instance, you may transfer a traditional IRA or a former employer plan to the solo 401k plan. And if those are pre-tax funds, they would get transferred to the pre-tax solo 401k holding account, aka the brokerage account. Once you make that contribution, then you will also open up a separate brokerage account to hold the Roth solo 401k funds. And that's where the pre-tax solo 401k funds get converted into. That's known as an in-plan pre-tax solo 401k conversion to the Roth solo 401k. So they'll get converted to the Roth solo 401k holding account, aka brokerage account. And then the funds get converted over, and then that's going to be a taxable conversion. So let's say you convert $50,000 from that pre-tax solo 401k brokerage account to the Roth solo 401k brokerage account. Well, that $50,000 is going to be taxable. So you're going to have to pay taxes on that $50,000. But again, you're going to have to come up with the tax, you're going to have to come up with funds outside the plan to pay those taxes due on that conversion. And you pay those by the time you file your personal tax return, so your Form 1040. And those will be paid the following year. So, for example, if you process a conversion of pre-tax solo 401k funds here in 2025, then it's going to be taxable as a tax year 2025. And you're going to pay those taxes by April 15 of 2026 when you file your Form 1040 for tax year 2025. But once you convert those funds from the pre-tax solo 401k bucket, aka brokerage account, to the Roth solo 401k brokerage account, that's not the end of it. It the solo 401k provider also needs to report that conversion, that taxable conversion, to the IRS, and that's done by issuing Form 1099-R. And you want to make sure that you work with the provider who's going to get the job done. That is, issue that Form 1099-R to the IRS and a copy to you. And it's a two-step process. The solo 401k provider will file that Form 1099-R through Form 1096 with the IRS. And then you also have to report that taxable conversion on your Form 1040. So in order for the solo 401k provider to issue that Form 1099-R, you're going to have to complete an online conversion form. For example, clients of my solo 401k financial would complete the conversion form right here. Let me share that with you here. The form, the online form, this form right here. That's how they collect the information to issue that Form 1099-R, which, using the example of a conversion process in 2025, if you timely complete this Form 1099-R request form, my solo 401k financial will file that Form 1099-R as I previously stated. And you need to process that conversion. That means you need to move the funds from the pre-tax solo 401k to the Roth solo 401k by December 31st of 2025 and complete this form timely if you want to get that Form 1099-R issued, which again, it's a requirement. So you don't have a choice. That Form 1099-R has to be issued whether you have your solo 401k provider do it or your CPA perform that. Okay, let's keep moving on here. So we discussed how to process that pre-tax solo 401k conversion. Now, we talked about eligible sources already. That is, you can convert pre-tax solo 401k funds and voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds. As far as when to process that solo 401k Roth conversion, well, it depends whether you're converting voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds versus pre-tax Roth solo 401k funds. Reason being is that with voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds that get converted to the Roth solo 401k, you're going to want to convert those right away so that there are little gains, because the gains will be taxable if they get converted to the Roth solo 401k or the Roth IRA. Now, from a pre-tax solo 401k perspective, that one there is a little bit different with respect to timing. Why? Because when you convert pre-tax solo 401k funds to the Roth solo 401k, that amount converted is going to be fully taxable. Therefore, you really want to think as to when you process that conversion. For example, a lot of people don't know that you don't have to solely convert actual liquid funds. You can convert an actual asset owned in the pre-tax solo 401k to the Roth solo 401k. For example, if you own a rental property inside a pre-tax solo 401k plan and you want to convert that to the Roth solo 401k, from a planning perspective, it's best to convert that property when the market value greatly decreases because of market conditions. Let's say that value of real estate goes down. Well, if you convert that property at a low fair market value, you're not going to have to pay as much taxes because the conversion is going to be based on the value of that property, and taxes due on the conversion are going to be based on the market value of that property. So you're going to want to convert that property when real estate values are not high. Also, let's say you own a stock in that pre-tax solo 401k. Let's say you own Microsoft or Nvidia or Amazon stock or any stock for that matter. And let's say that the market goes down because some type of economic downturn. So let's say that that stock, the value of that stock goes from $100 to $20. Well, you're going to want to convert that stock at $20 as opposed to $100 value, because if you convert it at a $20 value from the pre-tax solo 401k to the Roth solo 401k, you're only going to have to pay taxes on $20,000 versus $100,000. So yes, you can convert assets in the pre-tax solo 401k plan to the Roth solo 401k plan. Same thing with private investments. Let's say you own a private syndicate or some type of private equity investment inside a pre-tax solo 401k. You can convert that when it's at a low value. Because if you convert it at a high value, you're going to have to pay taxes on that market value. And once it gets converted to that Roth solo 401k and the market goes back up, it's all going to grow tax free. So from a conversion perspective, it's really important that you try to time the conversion of pre-tax solo 401k assets to the Roth solo 401k, because those will be fully taxable based on the market value of that investment. Okay, it looks like we have another question here. Let's go ahead and pause with our presentation and take a look at that. So here it is. Do you have to do the 1099-R if you are not converting money to an outside IRA? I mean, if you are just converting inside the solo 401k to the Roth solo 401k, you always have to do the 1099-R reporting when you process a conversion of pre-tax solo 401k funds to the Roth solo 401k plan. That's a requirement. That's a big IRS audit red flag, as a matter of fact. You also have to issue a Form 1099-R if you convert voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds to a Roth IRA or to a Roth solo 401k. So conversions always have to be reported to the government on a Form 1099-R. That's one of the top 5 IRS audit triggering events, is not issuing that Form 1099-R. Great question. Okay, go ahead and continue asking your questions as we continue with our topic here. We're almost done with today's presentation. So if you have questions to ask and you have not already, you better get those over now. Okay, let's go back to our presentation here, which again, today's topic is, can you do a Roth conversion in a solo 401k plan? And we've been going over many aspects of that. So let's see here. So it looks like we actually have covered all the topics today regarding can you do a Roth conversion in a solo 401k, which we have discovered that the answer is yes. So in short, you can certainly do conversions of pre-tax solo 401k funds or voluntary after-tax solo 401k funds. You just need to make sure you follow those regulations and you consider the topics we discussed here when deciding to process a conversion. Okay, looks like we have another question here. Let's take a look at that. It's a follow-up question to the prior question. It says, okay, no problem. Can do that for sure. Are there any other top IRS auditing red flags I should be aware of regards to solo 401k? Oh, certainly. There are certainly a lot of audit triggering events. Another popular one is not filing the Form 5500 Easy, which is an informational return due to the IRS every year once the market value of your solo 401k plan is greater than $250,000. as of the end of the plan year, which is typically December 31st. Another top IRS audit is making Roth solo 401k or voluntary after-tax solo 401k contributions to a plan that does not allow for those type of contributions. Another one is failing to file a final Form 1099-R and a Form 5500 easy regardless of market value when closing a solo 401k plan. Another one is not keeping up with the plan updates. Many times individuals out there think that establishing a solo 401k plan is a one-shot deal and that's it, and that they don't need to continue with the solo 401k plan document provider. As a result, the provider will resign from that individual solo 401k plan and communicate that to the IRS, and the individual thought that, oh, I only needed to pay a fee to set up a solo 401k plan for the first time, and then their plan falls out of compliance because the plan updates were never made because you did not continue paying the annual fee. That's actually the top 2 IRS audit trigger. So I just gave you the 5 top IRS triggering events. There are a few other ones. So again, thank you for joining today's daily webinar, where we discuss daily questions as well as certain topics. We'll be back again tomorrow. So if you did not get your questions shot out, if you did not shoot over your questions today, we'll be back here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And until then, have a good rest of the day.